In this lesson, let's take a look at index notation. So what is index notation? So in index notation, right, we have a base and an index. So the base is basically this big number here, and the index is basically this small number or this superscript that is written on the top right hand side of the base. So when we have a base and an index, you can look at it as it tells us how many times the base is multiplied by itself. Okay, so the index tells us the number of times the base is multiplied by itself. So we call this 5 to the power of 3. Okay, so when we have 5 to the power of 3, okay, it means that 5, which is the base, is multiplied by itself for 3 times. So it is 5 times 5 times 5. All right, so let's have some other examples. 8 times 8. So 8 times 8, so 8 is multiplied by itself for 2 times. So you have 8 to the power of 2, or 8 square. Okay, and we all know that 8 square, or 8 times 8, is 64. Okay, but when we write it in index notation, it's 8 to the power of 2. Okay, now let's try this. 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 times 5. Okay, so if you look at this, it's very complicated, right? It's very hard to see how many times 5 is multiplied by itself. So when you write it in index notation, it becomes easier to see how many times 5 is multiplied by itself. So 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 times 5. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 5 is multiplied by itself for 6 times. So therefore, this is equivalent to 5 to the power of 6. And when we write this in the form of 5 to the power of 6, we call this index notation. Okay, because you have an index here. All right. Okay, something to note, some common mistakes that some students make. Plus has nothing to do with index notation. So if you have 5 plus 5 plus 5, it is equals to 3 times 5. It is not equals to 5 cubed. Okay, you need to multiply. Okay, so it must be multiplication. It cannot be a plus. All right.